The first thing Kaelin learned about the Sunstone Court was that it was a cage gilded with lies. She felt them in the too perfect smiles of the courtiers, in the hollow echoes of their prayers to the sacred flame, in the way their eyes slid over her, the newly arrived cousin from a distant, lesser branch of the family. They saw a simple country noblewoman, her hands still rough from the sea voyage, her demeanor too direct for their labyrinthine etiquette. They did not see the weight of the star-metal dagger hidden in her boot, or the sigils of power she traced onto her palm each morning, invisible to all but her own kind. Her name was not truly Kaelin. It was Cyra, of the Saffron Veil. And she was not a courtier, but a sentinel. Her purpose was not to curtsy, but to protect. Her charge, Lyra, radiant queen of the Sunstone Kingdom. From her place by the tall, arched window, Kaelin watched the queen. Lyra held court from the sun throne, a massive chair carved from a single block of honey-colored quartz that seemed to drink the afternoon light. She was young, barely 20, with hair the color of spun gold and eyes the pale, clear gray of a winter sky. She was beautiful, yes, but it was a brittle beauty, like frost on a leaf. The weight of 1,000 years of tradition, the fear of a prophecy, and the desperate need for an heir pressed down on her slender shoulders. "The Glimmerwood reports another skirmish with the Shadow-Touched," droned Lord Valerius, his voice a nasal hum in the vast chamber. "The beasts grow bolder, your radiance. They claw at the very edges of the light." A murmur of fear rippled through the court. The Shadow-Touched, twisted, malformed creatures of darkness that were said to spawn from the breath of the great worm, the ancient enemy sealed beneath the earth a millennium ago by the first Sun King. Here, in the heart of the Sunstone Kingdom, the worm was the ultimate evil. All darkness was suspect. All that was not of the flame was heresy. Kaelin's lips thinned. The ignorance was a shield, and a dangerously fragile one. "The border legions will be reinforced," Lyra replied, her voice steady, though Kaelin saw the faint tremor in the hand resting on the throne's arm. "The light will not be extinguished." As the court droned on, Kaelin's true work began. She let a sliver of her awareness slip free, reaching for the ether, the hidden river of energy that flowed through all things. To the court, the air in the throne room was merely air. To Kaelin, it was a tapestry of shimmering threads. She sought the discordant notes, the patches of thickening shadow, the faint, oily smear of a poison that was not physical but spiritual. The Saffron Veil had sent her here because the queen's life was being drained by a slow, insidious magic, a withering, and their order alone knew how to combat it. Her search was interrupted by the arrival of Lord Corbin, the queen's chancellor and the man Kaelin trusted least in the entire Citadel. He was a tall, severe man with silver-streaked hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Your Radiance," Corbin said, bowing. "The emissary from the Jade Dominion has arrived. He awaits your audience." A new tension, sharp and curious, filled the room. The Jade Dominion was the empire across the sea, a land of mist-shrouded mountains and serpentine rivers, where they did not fear dragons, but revered them. To the Sunstone faith, they were little better than heretics. "Bring him in," Lyra commanded. The man who entered was unlike anyone in the Sunstone Court. He was tall and lithe, dressed in robes of deep emerald silk embroidered with coiling, silver serpents. His hair was black and tied back in a complex knot, and his eyes held a calm, unnerving stillness. He moved with the grace of a predator, or a dancer. "I am Jean," he said, his voice a low melodic baritone that carried effortlessly through the silent hall. He bowed, not the deep obeisance of a subject, but the respectful dip of an equal. "I bring greetings from the dragon throne of the Jade Dominion to the sun throne of Sunstone. We have watched the shadows lengthen in your land. We offer our counsel." Lord Corbin's smile was a knife. "Your counsel is noted, Emissary Jean. But we of the Sunstone put our faith in the flame, not in the creatures of scale and shadow your people worship." Jin's gaze was unflinching. The serpents of the Jade River are not shadows, Lord Chancellor. They are the guardians of the world's balance. It is the fire drake you fear, the beast you call the Great Worm, that seeks to unravel it. We fight the same enemy, only you refuse to see its true face. The air grew cold. Kaelin held her breath. This was the schism made flesh, standing in the heart of the Sunstone Court. And she, the only one who knew that both sides were blind to the full truth. Later that night, in the Queen's private solar, the tension shattered. Kaelin was applying a protective salve of moonwort and crushed starlight pearl to the Queen's temples, a nightly ritual to ward off the withering. The room was warm, lit by a gentle fire, the heavy velvet curtains drawn against the night. "You are unusually quiet tonight, Kaelin," Lyra said, her eyes closed. The formal mask of the Queen was gone, leaving only a tired young woman. "The emissary from the Dominion. He speaks dangerously," Kaelin said carefully, massaging the salve into Lyra's skin. Her fingers tingled where they touched the Queen, a sensation that was both part of her duty and a growing personal disturbance. "Dangerous words are a currency here," Lyra sighed. "Lord Corbin believes he is a spy. My council urges me to send him away." "And what do you believe, Your Radiance?" Lyra opened her eyes, and her grey gaze was sharp, intelligent. "I believe that the attacks from the Glimmerwood are increasing. I believe the harvests are failing in the south for no reason our priests can name. I believe that I feel a coldness deep in my bones that your salves cannot entirely warm." She looked directly at Kaelin. "I believe that perhaps it is folly to reject any offer of help, no matter how unorthodox its source." In that moment, Kaelin saw not a queen bound by dogma, but a ruler desperate for a solution. It was a crack in the facade, and it made Lyra more compelling, and more vulnerable, than ever. Suddenly, the fire guttered. The shadows in the corners of the room deepened, coalescing into a tangible, breathing darkness. The temperature plummeted. Kaelin reacted instantly, shoving Lyra behind her and drawing the star-metal dagger from her boot. The blade hummed with a soft, silvery light. From the deepest shadow, a figure emerged. It was man-shaped, but wrought from solidified night, with eyes that were pits of nothingness and claws of frozen smoke. A shadespawn. An assassin of the worm. It moved with impossible speed, lunging for the Queen. Kaelin met its charge, her dagger flashing. The metal sheared through the shadow stuff, and the creature let out a silent, mind-shattering scream. It was like fighting a hole in the world, a vortex of cold and despair. She could feel its purpose, not to kill, but to extinguish, to wither. She fought with the esoteric forms of the veil, her movements a dance of light and will. She was tiring, the thing's corrosive presence sapping her strength, when the door to the solar burst open. It was Jean. He took in the scene in an instant. He didn't cry out or draw a conventional weapon. Instead, he raised a hand, and on his wrist, a bracelet of jade stones glowed with an inner, verdant fire. The air itself seemed to bend around him, and from his lips came a low, resonant hum, a sound that was both song and command. A torrent of wind, visible as a shimmer in the air, slammed into the shadespawn. It wasn't a physical force alone, it was woven with something older, something wild. The creature of shadow writhed, its form beginning to unravel like thread under the onslaught of this primordial power. Between Kaelin's light-wrought dagger and Jin's dragonsong, the shadespawn dissolved into a wisp of acrid smoke and was gone. The room was silent but for the ragged sound of their breathing. The fire sputtered back to life. Lyra stood, pale and trembling, her hand pressed to her mouth. Jin's calm eyes found Kaelin's, then dropped to the glowing dagger in her hand. A star-metal blade. The weapon of the saffron veil. "I thought your order extinct." Kaelin's heart hammered against her ribs. Her secret, her very identity, was laid bare in an instant. And I thought the dragon speakers of the Jade Dominion were a myth. Lyra looked between them, her gaze shifting from the dagger to Jin's glowing bracelet. The fear in her eyes was being replaced by a dawning, terrifying understanding. "What?" she whispered, her voice raw, "are you?" The Queen's solar became a council of war. The three of them, the Queen, the Sentinel, and the Dragon Speaker, sat by the fire, the gulf of their respective dogmas laid bare between them. "The Saffron Veil," Lyra repeated, the name foreign on her tongue. "The legends say they were witches. Heretics who consorted with the very shadows we fight. The Veil was founded by the one who helped the first Sun King seal the Fire Drake, Kaelin, Cyra, corrected gently, her true name still a shield she was reluctant to lower. We do not consort with shadows. We understand them. We wield the ether, the light between the stars, to combat the withering, the entropy that the Fire Drake embodies. The poison that is killing you is a form of it." Lyra's hand went instinctively to her chest. "And you?" she asked, turning to Jean. "My people remember what yours has chosen to forget," Jean said. "The Great Worm is no mere beast. It is a fire drake, a creature of pure destruction that seeks to burn the world to cinders. It was never truly sealed. Its prison, the earth furnace deep beneath your own Spire Mountains, has been weakening for a century. Its breath is the corruption that creates the shadow-touched. Its will is the withering that sickens your land and your queen." He leaned forward, his intense gaze pinning Lyra. "Your sacred flame faith is a half-truth, your radiance. The first Sun King did not act alone. He fought alongside a celestial serpent, one of the great jade dragons of the air. The flame and the serpent, sun and stone, were the two keys to the prison. You have guarded the flame, your bloodline is its anchor. But you have lost the serpent. Without both, the prison will fail." The silence that followed was heavier than any stone. Lyra looked shattered. The very foundation of her world, her faith, her purpose, was being dismantled before her. "This is madness," she breathed. "You speak of my bloodline as a key. My council, my people, they believe I must produce an heir to continue the sacred line that holds the worm at bay. It is not the mere continuation of your blood that sustains the prison," Jean said, his voice softening almost imperceptibly. "It is your life force, bound to the flame. An heir would create a new anchor, but it is you yourself who is currently the lock. And the withering is a tool to pick that lock." Kaelin watched the realization dawn on Lyra's face. The pressure to marry, to bear a child, was not just about succession. It was about the literal survival of the world. And she was dying. "So your solution, Emissary Jean?" Lyra asked, her voice regaining a thread of steel. "The Jade Dominion has guarded the last known egg of a celestial serpent for 1,000 years. It has not hatched. Our lore states it will only awaken in the presence of the sunblood, near the earth furnace. We must journey to the Spire Mountains, to the site of the original sealing. You must come with us. Together, we may reforge the seal." "Us?" Kaelin interjected. Jean looked at her. "The Sentinel of the Veil is the only one who can purify the withering that clings to the Queen long enough for her to survive the journey. And your ether magic may be the only thing that can mend the cracks in the prison itself. We three are pieces of a whole, whether we wish to be or not." It was an impossible plan. A queen leaving her throne? Traveling into the heart of the enemy's domain with a heretical witch and a foreign agent? It was tantamount to suicide, both politically and physically. Lyra stood and walked to the window, looking out over the sleeping citadel, its white towers bathed in moonlight. "Lord Corbin will have you both executed if he learns of this. He would rather see the kingdom die pure than saved by heresy." "Then he chooses a beautiful extinction," Kaelin said quietly. Lyra turned, and in her grey eyes, the Queen was fully present. The fear was still there, but it was now subordinate to resolve. Then we will not tell him. She looked from Jean to Kaelin. We three. We go to the spires. The unspoken alliance was forged not in trust, but in necessity. The preparations were made in absolute secrecy. Kaelin used her knowledge of the Citadel's lesser-known passages to gather supplies. Jean, through some unknown means, sent a message to his ship, the Jade Tempest, waiting in a hidden cove. Lyra, playing the part of a grieving, withdrawn monarch, announced she would be undertaking a private spiritual retreat in the High Temple within the Citadel, a place where she would not be disturbed for several weeks. They left on a night when the moons were shrouded by cloud. Disguised as common travelers, they slipped through a postern gate and met Jin's first mate, a formidable woman named Anya, with a trio of rugged, sure-footed mountain horses. The journey east, towards the jagged teeth of the Spire Mountains, was a descent into a different world. The fertile plains around the Sunstone Citadel gave way to rocky foothills and then to a blighted landscape. The trees were skeletal, their branches twisted into agonized shapes. The air grew cold and thin, carrying a faint, metallic tang of ozone and decay. This was the withering, made manifest on the land itself. Kaelin rode close to Lyra, constantly monitoring her. The further they traveled, the paler the Queen became. The cold in her bones was a palpable force now, and Kaelin spent hours each night channeling the ether, weaving nets of starlight around Lyra's spirit to hold the creeping darkness at bay. The process was draining, leaving Kaelin hollowed out, but the gratitude in Lyra's eyes was a fuel she hadn't known she needed. Jean was a quiet, watchful presence. He scouted ahead, his connection to the natural world allowing him to sense the approach of shadow touched long before they were seen. Kaelin watched him one evening as he stood on a ridge, his face turned into the wind, his body still as a stone. He was listening to the language of the earth, a language her own ether magic could sense but not comprehend. They are gathering, he said when he returned to their small, hidden campfire. The shadow touched. They are being drawn to the mountains, like iron to a lodestone. The prison is calling them home. To defend it? Lyra asked, huddling closer to the fire. To be consumed by it, Jean corrected grimly. The fire drake feeds on life, on essence. They are its final offering, the last meal it needs to break free. As the days turned into a week, the dynamic between the three of them began to shift. The rigid formality of court evaporated, replaced by the raw, shared experience of survival. Lyra, freed from the cage of her throne, began to ask questions. She asked Jean about the Jade Dominion, about the dragons he called serpents. She asked Kaelin about the saffron veil, about the ether, about her life before the court. One night, as Kaelin finished a particularly strenuous healing session, her hands trembling with exhaustion, Lyra caught her wrist. "You are pushing yourself too hard," Lyra said, her voice soft with concern. "It is my duty," Kaelin replied, her usual deflection. "Is it?" Lyra's gaze was searching. "Or is it more?" Kaelin's breath caught. The space between them, once defined by rank and secrecy, had collapsed into something intimate and terrifying. She could see the flecks of silver in Lyra's gray eyes, feel the faint warmth of her skin. The attraction she had been suppressing, the fierce protectiveness that had curdled into something deeper, now threatened to overwhelm her. "It is my choice," Kaelin whispered. Lyra's fingers tightened slightly. "Then I am grateful for your choice, Cyra." It was the first time she had used her true name. The sound of it on Lyra's lips was like a key turning in a lock deep inside her. She didn't pull away. From the other side of the camp, Jean watched them, his expression unreadable. He said nothing, merely turned back to studying the star charts of his people. They reached the foot of the highest peak, a monstrous fong of black rock named the World Pillar, in the dead of a starless night. The entrance to the earth furnace was a yawning cavern that exhaled a breath of sulphurous heat, a stark contrast to the frigid mountain air. The ground trembled underfoot with a deep, rhythmic pulse, like the heartbeat of a dying god. "This is it," Jean said, his voice barely a whisper. He unstrapped a long, narrow case from his saddle. Inside, nestled on a bed of black velvet, was the egg. It was about the size of a human torso, its shell a mosaic of jade green and milky white, swirling with faint, internal light. It was profoundly beautiful, and radiated an ancient, sleeping power. The cavern descent was a journey into nightmare. The walls were not stone, but a strange fused glass, as if the very rock had once melted and flowed. Strange, phosphorescent fungi cast a sickly green light, revealing tunnels that twisted and branched. The air grew hotter, thicker, until it was hard to breathe. And the shadows moved. They were not shade spawns here, but something worse. Manifestations of the fire drake's rage. Lurking, molten shapes in the rock, whispers that clawed at the mind. Kaelin held her dagger aloft, its silvery light a tiny bastion against the overwhelming darkness. Jean hummed his dragon song, a low, constant thrum that seemed to make the hostile air part before them. Lyra walked between them, her face a mask of pain and determination. The withering was a vortex here, pulling at her life force. Kaelin held her hand, channeling the ether directly into her, a continuous, draining lifeline. After what felt like an eternity, the tunnel opened into a cavern so vast its ceiling was lost in gloom. Below them yawned a colossal pit, at the bottom of which churned a lake of fire, the earth furnace. The heat was a physical blow. In the center of the lake of magma, a massive black chain, each link as thick as an ancient tree, rose from the fire and disappeared into the cavern roof. The chain was cracked, glowing with a malevolent red light along its fractures. The prison. And it was breaking. At the edge of the pit stood a figure, shrouded in a cloak of shifting shadows. As they approached, the figure turned. It was Lord Corbin. His face was a grimace of triumph and fanaticism. "Your radiance," he said, his voice echoing strangely in the vast space. "I knew you would come. Drawn by the heresy of these outsiders. I have followed you, to witness the culmination of our faith." "Corbin, stand aside," Lyra commanded, her voice weak but unwavering. "Stand aside? While you betray everything we stand for. The flame is pure. It needs no serpent, no witch. The prophecy states that the Queen's sacrifice will renew the seal." His eyes blazed with madness. "Your death here, by the furnace, is the only way to save the Sunstone Kingdom. It is the highest duty." He raised his hands, and dark energy, the same that powered the withering, coalesced around him. He had embraced the very poison he claimed to fight. "His mind is gone," Jean said, his voice hard. "Consumed by the Drake's influence." Corbin unleashed a wave of pure negation, a force that sought to unmake them. Kaelin threw herself in front of Lyra, her dagger flaring as it met the attack. The impact sent her stumbling back, pain lancing up her arm. Jean began his song, a more powerful, commanding melody now. The air shimmered around him, and for a moment, Kaelin thought she saw the ghostly outline of a vast winged serpent forming in the steam and smoke behind him. The egg in his arms began to glow brighter, pulsating in time with his song. While Jean held Corbin at bay, Kaelin turned to Lyra. "The seal. Your bloodline is the key to the flame. You have to reach for it." Lyra, trembling, stepped towards the edge of the abyss. She closed her eyes, her hands outstretched towards the broken chain. Kaelin could see her fighting, not just Corbin's external assault, but the internal withering that sought to devour her from within. "I can't." Lyra gasped. "It's too strong." "No," Kaelin said, coming to her side, placing a hand on her back. She poured every last reserve of her strength, every ounce of her will, into the Queen. "You are Lyra, of the Sunblood. You are the flame. You are not alone. Their connection, forged in secrecy and tested on the road, now blazed like a sun. The protective, professional duty had long since melted away, leaving only a raw, desperate love. Kaelin wasn't just giving her energy, she was giving her heart. Lyra's eyes snapped open, blazing with golden light. A torrent of pure, solar fire erupted from her, slamming into the broken chain. The malevolent red glow in the fractures flared, then began to be forced back, the metal groaning as it started to knit itself back together. But it wasn't enough. The chain held, but the prison was still unstable. The fire drake beneath the magma roared, a sound that shook the very foundations of the mountain. The serpent. Jean yelled over the din, the balance. He held the egg aloft. It was now glowing like a small star, the patterns on its shell moving, swirling. As Lyra's flame energy washed over it, a hairline crack appeared on its surface. A corresponding crack of brilliant green light appeared in the air above the furnace. From it emerged a being of breathtaking beauty and power. It was the celestial serpent, not a beast of scale and flesh, but a creature of woven jade light and storm wind. It was long and graceful, with eyes like molten emeralds and wings that were vast, shimmering auroras. It let out a cry that was not a roar, but a chord of perfect, world-shattering music. The serpent dove towards the chain. It did not touch the metal, but instead, its ethereal form wrapped around it, its jade light weaving into the solar fire of Lyra's power. Where the flame was fierce and consuming, the serpent's energy was enduring, resilient, unyielding. The two forces, sun and stone, flame and serpent, intertwined. The cracks in the chain sealed completely, the metal cooling to a dull, stable gray. The malevolent pulse of the earth furnace slowed, then stilled. The oppressive presence of the fire drake receded, pushed back into a deep, dreamless sleep. The battle was over. Lord Corbin, his source of power severed, let out a wail of despair and crumbled to dust. Exhaustion hit them like a physical wave. The spectral serpent looked at them, its ancient intelligence acknowledging their roles, before dissolving back into the ether from whence it came. The egg in Jin's arms was now a dull, inert stone, its purpose fulfilled. Lyra collapsed. Kaelin caught her, sinking to the ground with the queen in her arms. The terrible coldness was gone. The withering had been purged, burned away in the act of renewal. Jean stood watching them, his task complete. He gave a slow, respectful nod. The balance is restored. For now. They returned to the Sunstone Citadel as different people. The journey back was quiet, contemplative. The blight was already receding from the land, the twisted trees showing the first faint buds of green. The official story was that Lord Corbin had died a hero's death defending the Queen from a nest of shadow-touched during her spiritual retreat. It was a lie, but a necessary one to maintain stability. The truth of the saffron veil, the Jade Dominion, and the celestial serpent remained a secret for the three of them to bear. Jean prepared to leave. On the docks, with the Jade Tempest waiting, he turned to them. "The world is wider than one faith," he said to Lyra. "And stronger for its diversity. The Jade Dominion will remember its ally in the Sunstone Throne. And we will remember the friend who came with the truth, when we needed it most," Lyra replied, her voice firm. She was no longer the brittle queen, but a ruler tempered in fire and shadow. "There will be an embassy. And trade. Our world cannot be so divided again." Jean turned to Kaelin. "Sentinel. The veil has a place in this new world. Do not hide from it." He bowed once more, and boarded his ship. In the quiet of the Royal Solar, weeks later, Lyra and Kaelin stood again by the window. The citadel below was bustling, alive with a hope it hadn't known in years. "The council is already presenting me with new suitors," Lyra said, a hint of her old wryness returning. "They say the kingdom must have an heir, to secure the line. Kaelin's heart constricted. And what does the Queen desire? Lyra turned to her. She reached out and took Kaelin's hand, lacing their fingers together. The touch was electric, full of the memory of the mountain, of shared sacrifice, of a love declared in the face of oblivion. The Queen, Lyra said softly, desires the woman who saved her life. Not just from assassins and ancient evils, but from the cage of her own destiny. She stepped closer. The Queen desires Cyra of the Saffron Veil. The world has changed. Perhaps its rules can change as well. Kaelin looked at their joined hands, then into Lyra's clear grey eyes, now free of pain and full of a fearless, open love. The Sentinel's duty was over. The partner's journey was just beginning. Then let them change, Kaelin whispered and leaned in, sealing their pact not with a vow, but with a kiss, as the first light of a new dawn broke over the citadel of the Jade Sun. The balance was restored, not just in the earth, but in their hearts.